Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Office of the State Controller's Quick Bids training series. These videos are designed to help state agencies record and verify various accounting requirements within R-Stars based on guidance from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. I'll be walking you through the capital asset disposal fact pattern for the example transactions we'll be posting into R-Stars. For our example capital asset, we purchased a piece of equipment with a useful life of 7 years in the amount of $591,000. Additionally, in this example, there was no estimated salvage value. We calculated an annual depreciation of $84,428.57 by subtracting the estimated salvage value, if any, and there's none in this case, from the equipment cost, then dividing it by the useful life. The asset was sold after 7 years. Therefore, the asset was fully depreciated, as seen, by multiplying the annual depreciation by the number of years in service, which is 7. Finally, the asset was sold for $25,000. In the next few videos, we will walk you through the journal entries and how to enter them into R-Stars.
I will be making the needed entries to dispose of a capital asset that has been depreciated within R-Stars. Our disposition information shows that we sold the item for $25,000 after it was fully depreciated within R-Stars. I've already mapped out my entries with the document numbers, T-codes, and accounting elements I will need to use. This information is shown at the right of this screen. Make sure first that you are logged into R-Stars under the correct user class to make the entry. For my first entry, I will record the sales proceeds from the asset. I will use user class 19 to make the receipt entry. Once you're logged into R-Stars, navigate to the 500 screen. On the 500 screen, enter your agency number. For this example, I am using agency 107. Enter a batch date or leave the field blank. I am leaving the field blank, so it will default to the current date. Enter the batch type. I will be using batch type 2 for this entry. And then follow your agency's procedures for batch numbering. I'm using 139 for this entry. You can enter a batch count and a batch amount, or you can leave these fields blank. I'll enter 1 and $25,000. The batch edit mode is set to 2, and I'm going to leave it there. And then you can enter an effective date, or you can also leave this blank and allow it to default. I'm going to leave it blank. I can press F10, and that will save my batch header and move to the transaction entry screen. On the 504 screen, first I will confirm I have the correct effective date for the fiscal month I want my transaction to post, 6/30/29. And I will enter the document number for my entry. Mine is CR 122404 suffix 001. Enter the T code. The T code for this entry is 149 for to record the receipt. Enter your PCA and your agency object. My PCA is 81907 and my agency object is 2330. Enter the amount, which is $25,000. And then enter the document amount, which is the same for this entry, $25,000. Enter your description. For me, it is to record sales proceeds. And then enter your deposit number. Mine is DP 122401. And then at this point, I can press F4 to bring in any lookup fields and to confirm that I have no errors. My lookup fields have been brought in and I do not have any errors. At this point, I will press F10 to save my transaction. My transaction was successfully written. At this point, I will press F7 to go to the 520 screen and I can review my entry. And then I will press F6 to confirm that my batch is balanced. This batch is balanced, so it is ready for review and release, and that completes my first entry. My next entry is a balanced transaction where I will be using a T-code pair to remove the accumulated depreciation and remove the depreciated portion of the asset. In order to make this entry, I will need to use user class 27, and so I will switch at this time. Once you've switched user classes, navigate back to the 500 screen. Again, I will enter my agency and I will be using agency 107. Again, you can enter a batch date or leave that field blank. I'm going to leave it blank so it'll default to the current date. Enter the batch type. I will be using batch type 4 for this entry. And then again, follow your agency's procedures to assign a batch number. I'll be using batch 140 for this example. You may enter an expected batch count and batch amount, or you can leave these fields blank. I will be entering 2 transactions for a total of $1,182,000. The batch edit mode is set to 2, and I will leave it there. And again, you can enter an effective date or leave the field blank. At this point, I will press F10 to save my header and enter. On the 505 screen, I will confirm that I have the right effective date where I want my transaction to post, so 6/30/29, and then I will enter my document number, which is BT 122404, suffix 001. I will enter my transaction code, so 573 is the first half of the T-code pair. And then I will enter the PCA 99906 and the amount, which is $591,000, and the document amount, which for this entry is 0. Going to enter my description to remove the accumulated depreciation. And then this entry requires an OpenGL, so I will enter 80869 for accumulated depreciation, equipment, and machinery. And then at this point, I will press F4 to bring in my lookup fields and to confirm if I have any errors. My lookup fields have been brought in and I do not have any errors. So at this point, I will press F10 to save my transaction. My transaction was successfully written. So for my second entry, I will enter the other half of the T-code pair. Many of the fields have carried over from my previous entry and the suffix incremented by 1 to 002. I will enter T-code 574. The PCA carried over and is the same. I will enter the payment amount, $591,000. My document amount is still 0. I do need to change the description to remove the depreciated portion of the asset. And then I need to change my OpenGL to 80815 for equipment and machinery. At this point, I will press F4 to bring in any lookup fields and to confirm that I have no errors. My lookup fields have been brought in and I don't see any errors. So at this point, I'll press F10 to save my transaction. My transaction was successfully written. At this point, I can press F7 to go to the 520 screen, and review my 2 lines of entry, and then I can press F6 to confirm that my batch is balanced. The batch is balanced, so it's now ready for review and release. This concludes my entries to record the disposition of the fully depreciated capital asset within the R-star system.
We have generated the DAFR 6610 and 6620 reports to verify the information was recorded properly. The examples used in these videos were created within the acceptance region. Since OBI does not include the acceptance region, we ordered the DAFR 6610 and 6620 reports. But under normal circumstances, the DAFR 6610 and 6620 reports within the OBI repository will show the same information. These reports are used by your SARS analyst in conjunction with agency disclosures to evaluate if balances and activities are recorded correctly for proper reporting in the ACFR. Therefore, it's important to review either these DAFR reports or OBI queries regularly and during the year-end closing process. Scrolling through the reports briefly, we can verify the information. Since we're confined by the restraints of the acceptance region, we made some edits to these DAFR reports in order to illustrate the outcome of the entries we've posted. In the previous portion of our training, we walked you through recording a disposition of a capital asset within R-stars. We see it here on the DAFR 6610 in the Government-Wide Reporting Fund, in Agency Object 5150, which rolls up to Comptroller Object 5150, representing equipment and machinery. This balance is 0 in our example because there were no current year capital asset additions. The depreciation expense for the current year is also 0 since the 7-year asset was fully depreciated as of 10/31/2026. Furthermore, in the governmental fund, we see the gain of $25,000 due to the sales proceeds here. This is appropriate. Turning to the DAFR 6620 in the Government-Wide Reporting Fund, in GLs 3074 and 3600, the balances are 0 as there was no activity during the current year since, again, the asset was already fully depreciated. Once more, it's worth noting that GLs 0815 and 0869 are both 0 as well as our transactions removed those balances. These are appropriate. Finally, in the governmental fund, we'll see the unreconciled deposit here of $25,000 from step 1 of our entries. These transactions have been recorded correctly.